As you may know, the Bishop of Rhode Island, Thomas Tobin, has told Congressman Patrick Kennedy, Ted Kennedy's son, that he can no longer receive communion in the Catholic Church. This because of Kennedy's support for abortion rights. Now, obviously, that's caused all kinds of controversy, and last night I spoke with Bishop Tobin, the author of the book, Effective Faith, Faith That Makes a Difference. Now, Bishop, some believe this is intrusion by the Catholic Church into public policy matters, and how do you see that?
Right, well, certainly I wouldn't define it that way. I think the Church has every right and indeed the obligation to be at the table in these important questions of public policy, and certainly the bishops for a long time now have been involved in the question involving health care and the legislation that's developing, but in lots of other issues too. And as I've often said, if the Church, not just the Catholic Church, but the religious community, if we don't bring these values, this spiritual vision to these discussions, who else will do that?
But isn't there a difference between speaking out, which you're entitled to do, and punishing someone like Congressman Kennedy who doesn't see it your way?
Well, obviously he doesn't see it my way, but I don't think it's a punishment at all. Every Catholic has certain obligations. It means something to say you're a Catholic. No one is forced to be a Catholic. If you choose freely to be a Catholic, it means you do certain things and you believe certain things. And I think all I'm trying to say to Congressman Kennedy and others who might be involved to say, if you're a Catholic, live up to your faith. Understand what the Church teaches. Accept those teachings and live that faith.
But they say the Kerrys and the Cuomos and the Kennedys of the powerful Catholic political families all say the same thing, that their private belief system does not reflect their public policy system. So Patrick Kennedy says, look, the Supreme Court has upheld this, it's legal in the land, I don't want to deprive people who don't believe the way I do the option of abortion. And you answer?
The most important commitment we can make is to our faith, because that defines our relationship with God. Nothing is more important than that. And if your job, your profession, your vocation gets in the way of that, you have to quit your job and save your soul.
Interesting.
Now, if there are ways you can work through that, fine. But your faith is the most important commitment you will ever make, and nothing can ever interfere in your relationship with God.
Okay, but here's the problem with that. Say the death penalty is in play. The Church does not believe in the death penalty, yet millions of American Catholics do. Would you deprive people who believe in the death penalty? Would you say they can't go to communion?
No, of course not. First of all, there's
whoa. You say, of course not. We're talking about two public policy matters that the Church is pretty adamant about. Abortion, no. Death penalty, no. But you say abortion, no communion, but death penalty, okay. That confuses me as a Catholic.
Sure. Well, let me try to explain. Abortion, we believe, is intrinsically wrong. It's always wrong. There are no circumstances under which abortion can be justified.
Even with rape and incest? Even with rape and incest?
However, right, the Church has been very clear and very consistent about that. However, the Church has also taught pretty consistently the death penalty, while it is not necessary and probably immoral in our time, at least in theory there may be circumstances that allows the death penalty to be a moral option.
If you know, Bishop, there's somebody openly committing adultery or somebody driving a divorce, do you say to them privately, don't go to communion?
Well, a pastor might very well say to someone privately, because of your living situation, you should not be receiving communion. Might be a couple who are cohabitating, or someone involved in an adulterous situation, or some other immoral situation. It might not be public, but it might be known to that person's pastor, and indeed that pastor should say, you know, you probably shouldn't be receiving communion until you can address this situation.
You're one of the few clerics in the world, Bishop, who have called out a powerful person and flat out said, you can't take the sacrament of the Holy Eucharist because of what you're doing. And I wonder how common that is with parishioners and regular Janes and Johns.
There are lots of Catholics who probably should not be receiving communion because of their personal circumstances, but there might not be the same issue of scandal. When a public person is in a position of power who affects legislation, there's a huge question of scandal. But for other individual Catholics, it might be a situation that they're not in the state of grace, as we say. You've heard that term. They're not prepared to receive communion. And if a pastor knew that, the pastor individually should certainly challenge that person.
All right, Bishop, thanks very much. We appreciate it. And once again, we did ask Congressman Kennedy to appear. He has so far declined.